Now that should be on now. You can laugh if you want to, because that's good for the on the video, all right. Anyway, we're going to do a little bit about Hale heritage, okay? You want to ask me questions afterwards. If there's something you're a bit worried about, well, you'll have to put your hand up, okay? Well, this is down Foundry. This is what they said about Hale in 1877. Look at this, a dirtier, squalor, less interested town than Hale. It's not to be found in all of Cornwall. Its population is composed of fishermen and miners, of labourers, and its 2 iron foundries, or 10 smelting works, railway employees, so therefore we recommend the tourist to leave Hale as quickly as he enters it. Now we are a World Heritage Site. There's 10. Well, I'm going to say 9, because this one over here, look, this bit there, is partly in England. All right? This is old Cornwall. We're down here somewhere. There we are. But that's what we are. We're a World Heritage Site. Now the Cornish Copper Company. We got it there 1756. I put in there 1819. They were smelting copper then, but they found an open cast mine in Wales, in Paris, it's called. Not Paris in France, but P-A-R-Y-S. And so they closed it down in Hale, but they carried on as the Cornish Copper Company till 1867. That's what it shows. It says that as well on there, doesn't it? Doing cast iron, but that's what they did. So when we refer to the Cornish Copper Company, and the Cornish Copper Company, if anybody knows Hale, by the playing field there, the petrol station, they have 25 furnaces there where they're knocking down, putting flats up. Arby's of Hale, of course, they come in 1779 till 1903. John Arby, born 1730 to 1803. That's John. And Henry Arby was born 1775 to 1850. Now, John Arby had 4 sons and 4 daughters. Sadly, he lost 3 sons in 1803. He died and Henry took over, so he was only a young man, really. But Henry Arby was a single man. But he had a girlfriend. She was called Alkin when they went to that, but she had 10 children. Now then we know that Jane Arby was married to Richard Trevithick. Well, Jane Arby was born in 1772. She lived till she was 1868, so she was 96 when she died. Of course, Richard Trevithick there, he was born in 1771 and he died in 1833, but that should be on in a minute. But see, so Henry Arby then had the 10 children looking after her. Then he had, because Richard Trevithick went over to South America in 1816 till 1827, and she didn't have no money coming in, so he took on her 6 children as well. And then sadly, one of his sisters died, and she left 6 children. So he was a single man in Hale with 22 children. Now I put this one in. This is what it's all about. This is what it's all about. Now you wonder who they think, because I took this photo. That's my beloved wife, all right? Because I'm not very good at taking photos. That's her fingers there, but this is all. They say the town, but of course we know in the 1700s and the early 1800s was the Industrial Revolution. Hale was part of it, so was Campbell, the truth. I got to say that because I got to get out through the door later on. This is the River Hale. There's St Ives over there. When we talk about the Cornish Copper Company going up there, and then Harvest down here. Okay? Now this is before 1852. There's the smelting works, it said 1779, Arby's of Hale, there we are. Over there, look, there's that place called St Ives. We won't mention that no more today. It was over there as well. Now this was in the early, because they had a station, which we'll see in 1837, but Isambard Kingdom Brunel designed the first bridge in Hale. And it went up in 1852. And that was timber and metal. And it was a single track. Went from up here, because, you know, up this area, right down to Penzance. And this is the one, I put this one in here, look. This is the bridge as you see it now, and that was put up, or rebuilt, because it was a twin track then, in the late 1880s. Now, if you go down Asda, you know where Asda's are now, if you happen to come out and have a look around, if you look at where the main road is here somewhere, look at that one there, the second one, and you'll see that he's sunk 12 inches. So my advice, if you're going down Hale shopping, is get off Camber and catch a bus. You will actually see it. When you look at it, you think, my gosh, it is. It's really sunk, gone down. He's all right for a minute. Here we are, look, Richard Trevithick, 1771. 1833. Now everybody says, oh well, but he died in the Bull Inn in Dartford in Kent in 1833. Everybody says he was a pauper, but I don't believe that. For one, I've read some stories about it, but I don't believe he was an actual pauper. Because he went over to South America for 11 years, and of course with all the revolutions going on, all his inventions, etc., etc. You know, he lost everything over there, but he didn't stay around Ale long afterwards. When he came home in 1827, and then he died in 1833. But he invented the high pressure steam, the first high pressure steam car that went on the road in 24th of December 1801 up Camber. And the reason he went up Camber is because he built all the metalwork. You imagine Henry Harvey was his brother-in-law, so he would say, because he was a manager down Madron as well, down the mine down there. He would say to his brother-in-law, I come up with this idea, can you make this? This was the foundry. So his brother, Henry Harvey, would cast this and cast that. So he come up with the first high-pressure steam car. But all the timber work for what we saw in Puffin Devil was made in Camber. It went to the Hayles are out of foundry, and that's where it was all put together. That's where, and up Camber, and they all coming down. Here we are, look. That wouldn't pass MOT now. But that's the first high-pressure steam vessel that went on the road. Now, in 1804, we went to Pennydower for a bet in Wales. I'm not sure where it is, but I know it's in Wales. It's definitely. And this, when you look at this track, it looks a bit, but it's up and down. But he pulled 5 carriages, 70 people, 1804, 9.1 miles for a bet. There's your first train. Same system, but that's the first train, 1804. This is just an old photo of the early 1900s. I might shoot back a bit there, but this is one of Foundry Square. We'll go on about that a bit there. Now this is the plantation. We've got King George V walk, but the plantation, which is down by opposite Asda, is King George's V. Anybody didn't know that, but that's what it is. I put this one in because of the Cunady stone. When Henry Harvey decided in 1846 that he was going to retire, where the plantation is, he wanted to put his house right up the top so he could see skies. He said he'd keep the curtains closed so he couldn't see too much. And then he could look out to the sea. But when they were digging down in the road, to make roads up the plantation, they come across this. Now, this was a burial granite it was, and it was from the 5th century. Cunady. It's now in the Heritage Centre in Hayles because it started to deteriorate. That was, so we know that coming from north, Liverpool, Wales, Ireland, etc., they come through Hayles, they went up to St. Earth, and believe it or not, up to Relubis, and they got off, went across land a little bit to near enough to Michael's Mountain, and then they crossed to Europe. I mean, what I'm telling you, this is only just skirting over it. This isn't, I'd be here for a week if I had to tell you everything that I know. Anyhow, the White Hart. We know that's 1838, don't we? 1838. Yes. There's the first White Hart there. That's the Masonic Lodge. 1824. This is what Henry Harvey had built. Jane Harvey. There it is there. That's the first one. 1824. When you look there, look, nice little big building there. See a colour photo on it. But this is 1838. Because Jane Harvey actually lived went uphill towards the hospital on the right. This is Marketplace in 1868. This is how wide the road was until the tourists started coming down. Then we had to take that wall back a bit. Now, that was Lloyd's Bank, believe it or not. When you see Lloyd's Bank down there, it's a single story now. But I'll show you the one thing. But we had a cinema down there in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s. Now this year, it's Foundry Post Office. It says it's a post office. But that was a smelting works, prolific smelting works, from 1805 until about 1852. That was called prolific smelting works. Here's the station. There's the Heritage Centre now. This is the Hayles station that was. It's called in the Isis Garden. Come out of Aston, they've got a bit of gardens there. That's where that was. In 1837. And it was demolished in 1948. That was there, and that would take the trains then all the way up the terrace, King George V Memorial Walk, come up over to New Ladies, non Marks and Sparks. Yeah, that's before Marks and Sparks. up to Ingarrick, and then it come all the way up, and one branch went off to Treat, and then the rest come to all the mines in this area, and it ended up, that line finished at Trezevine near Larne. That's from 1837, as I say. Isambard Kingdom Brunel, what a great fantastic, 1806 to 1859. I just say to a lot of people, you look at him there, and you look at these. They never had no Maxilvers then, did they? But they had to get the chains up. Just look at the size of the chains. They weren't something, you know. But they chains were from the SS Great Eastern. This is some of the things that he done. The Great Western, no, 1,300 tons. That was in 1837. 1837. The Great Britain, 1843. Now look at the Great Eastern, 18,000 tons. They built them to his design. This was in 1857, and it was so large then it had to be launched up near London sideways. They couldn't do it as they would normally do. But why it was so big was they'd heard of this place down the road called Australia. And they thought, right, this is all right. We'll build a big ship, fill them up with coal, so we can go down to Australia and come back again without nowhere to refuel. The time they completed that, discovered coal in Australia. But this was still used, it went down to Australia, but also it was used to lay transatlantic cables from here over to America, Newfoundland, down to India, etc., etc. So it was, it was well used. He built bridges, docks, hospitals, railway ships, the Thames Tunnel, and of course the observatory. But the Thames Tunnel, yes, the Thames Tunnel, his son was called Isambard as well, and at 3 years old, his son was the first person to go in it and walk all the way through with his father. And he was called Isambard, King of Brunel. Now, this is one of his great inventions, isn't it? I put this down to 1857. Okay? All the links that you see here, all these here bars and straps and all these, they were made by the Cornish Copper Company. Nothing to do with Arvis, where the petrol station or playing area with all the furnaces. But he had them made by the Cornish Copper Company. Now look at this, look at this. It was opened the 2nd of May, but I wouldn't have gone over there on the 11th of April, would you? Never know what's going to happen. But when I read a book, that there stanchion there is 80 feet down to bedrock. So they had to work 80 feet down to get bedrock, to get that center stanchion up. And it was opened in the 2nd of May, it's in 1859. Isambard, King of Brunel, then was very, very ill. It's said that he came down on a truck and he went across that because he died in September 1859. And because we go on about the Clifton Suspension Bridge, don't we? Because we say, well, that's all to do with, yes, a lot of the parts were made at Hayles. They went first to the Hungerford Bridge, and then they went to the Bristol, because the Bristol Council said, all the time that he was alive, you can't span that bridge. Well, he proved them wrong. But that wasn't open until 1864. But he was dead 5 years previous. So that's why Clifton Terrace over Hayles, named after Clifton Suspension Bridge, because all the parts were made in Hayles. This is where I work. I think that's me there, but we're just doing a little bit of, like a lot of these museums and all. I just wish we was open a bit more. I know it's all being recorded, but that don't matter. But I work down there, and I'm there normally Fridays. And I say I'm doing guided tours, so if anybody wants, just give me a shout, and we'll go on with it. I put this in just to show. This is Harvard's there about 1890, but this is all the amount of buildings that were required really for a foundry. I think from 1779. Fast. Now, here we go. There's the White Hart again, that's the first one. Then you've got the Lloyd's Bank. Look at this. Cannubia Biscuit Works was one of the first biscuit works, or automated, had rollers and all, from 1895 to 1917, doing biscuits. Now, there's a grist mill. Anybody who went up to the hospital, Sammy Phillips' shop is there on the left. There's nothing left now, but that's the grist mill. Because they was having up to 500 to 1,000 horses and ponies coming in, mainly from down Alston, St. Ives, etc., down there, coming into Ale to unload, go on the train, go on the boats and all. They needed a grist mill. and this was built in the late 1790s. And in the early 1900s, because it was derelict then, it became a mint humbug factory. And this is what's left of it now. This is all that's left of this here. I suppose if I tell you really the reason they didn't take it down, it was derelict, but they took it down in 1939 because it was the tallest building around. And they didn't want the Germans eyeing it up and using that as a point to go over to that work, which we'll see in a minute, ICI, etc. and all, to bomb it. So that was all taken down near enough to that height. Harvey's Emporium. If you worked for Harvey's at Hayles, that's it from 1779, he had his own shops. So you worked for him, you got half tokens and half money. But in 1831, the government brought in what they called a truck tax. Like a car, but a truck, you know, a truck tax. But it wasn't implemented, lots of going and fro and back until the late 1880s, until it was made, you know, it had to happen. If you earned £5, you got paid £5. And that's why, when you, if you go on the little green by the foundry there, and you look at all the shops, they're in people's gardens. As soon as the government said, you can sell what you want, where you want, people that live there put shops in their gardens. And that's the reason. When the government repealed this, what the Harvest was doing. There's 1840, now there, everybody seemed to have a church or a chapel. This was one down foundry. 1845, this was by Harvest again. Till 1867, there's a nice little market there now. But I tell everybody, my twin sister, I'm one of 10 boys and 3 girls. My twin sister was married there in 1867. In 1967, and I think the man in charge thought he'd had enough of we Smitherhams coming down and get her married. So a few weeks later, it was shut. And that is true. It was shut. I don't know what he talked about. There we are. We talk about horsepower. Horsepower, which we do now. We use horsepower. When you look, this is going over to one of the mines of Wheel War. Taking this over there to Wheel. There's 32 horses there. Come on now. Incredible, isn't it? That's what we want about horsepower. These are the pattern sheds. I know I've got to watch my time. These are pattern stores. That there over there is Juicing. This is the main railway line, not Juicing, but this is all being done. Anybody remember Todd's Vale? Used to be a furniture place. Well, that was it there. When I was a youngster in Millpond, 1796. Here we go. Look. Now this is where I do some of the tours as well. This here was the ropery and where they made all the shapes for the metals for the called the hammer works for the ships. The Harvest of Hayles built 79 ships. You'll see a photo of South Key in there. But this was, they actually powered that by 3 water wheels in the beginning to get everything working. So this is where, this was in the ropery there and the hammer works. You know, right by Phillips there, the little terrace called Tremella Terrace. But that was called Mill Road. Harvest had all them built in the early 1800s. So you come out your front door and you walk to that wall and it was in work. And that was it there. That's just another view of the mill pond as it was. That's the ropery. It was a, you know, I just put that one in. Drover's Row. It's as you're going up Foundry Hill on your right, there's a row of houses. Everybody that worked for Harvest that drove the horses lived in them houses. He did a lot of work for the people that worked there. And people call it Driver's Row, Drover's Row. Now, the Colosseum. In fact, a lot of people have seen this. This was inside the Colosseum. There you are. Right opposite the White Hart was that. Now, that was a machine. You imagine you're casting anything. Anybody knows a bit about casting, making stuff. There's no good casting it, and then putting it on a boat. He's going to Africa or America, you don't fit. This was the fitting shop for Harvest of Hayles. This is where, and of course it was more derelict than any other. In 1984, the council decided that would demolish that, have a council meeting, and they passed that it could be built for houses. So within 10 days of them getting permission, they didn't put the houses up in 10 days, but this is what they put there. This is right opposite the White Hart. What a fantastic building. So this is why the Hayles Heritage was formed in 1984 to preserve what we do in Camborne and Recruitment. I think it's on that and then Tuckermore now, which is really good. to preserve what buildings we got left, our industrial heritage. There's the houses. Now look at this one. In 1846 or 1845, the Dutch government come over. If anybody's been to Schiphol Airport, well, in 1846 it was 20 feet underwater because it was our Limmer Lake. It was a massive lake. The Dutch government, they're having because they're below sea level. They wanted somebody to pump this lake in. They come over to England and they asked the government, and they got Harvey's of Ale, Cornish Copper Company, and the Per Nuwerdo. And this is Mr. Davis Bickle, Francis Harvey, and there's Mr. Gilbert. You can tell who the boss is by looking at their acts. Biggest cylinders ever built in the world. Built in a foundry right opposite White Hart, 12-foot diameter, and they had to build a ship to take them all over to Holland. They started in 1848 pumping, and by July 1851, they had created over 112 square miles of land. Incredible feat in 3.5 years. Now, just quickly, you see these here, all got to be joined together. See, with nuts and bolts. Well, I went over there in 2018. I'd never been abroad before, but I went over there and they got a strange language. I couldn't understand what they were talking about. But I went over to the museum to see them. Might be, there we are. That's the Crucius. They had 3 pumping stations. This was still pumping in 1933. Then they closed it down and there's a museum. And look at all this. You know, there's all these fantastic in it. It's not just a bit of shuttering gone up and a bit of building. But people come from Truro all the way down that went over to Holland and over to see 4 years really building all these. But I went over there in 2018 with a friend of mine. We was there about 6 hours, and I explained that I could do talks and a bit of history and all like this. And they come out with a little box. They'd taken a nut off from down below. I went down right down the very bottom. And, because I was a shuttering carpenter years ago, I wanted to see what they'd done. They took me down. Anyhow, I got to Schiphol Airport. This nut was in my bag. And then my name was called out, and I had to go up in front of these people, I opened my bag up. Yes, is that yours? Yes, it is. So I tried to explain to them what it was. And I turned around to everybody that was there. This is true, my wife was saying. The gentleman said, 1 nut taking another nut home. And I should have brought it today, but it was my excitement of coming up through camera. And I keep the wheels turning. But anyhow, 12 foot in diameter. We estimate them at 25 tons each. What incredible, it's just history, isn't it? It's what they all did. But we'll move on a little bit. This is what is there as well. Now the archway, if anybody again knows the mill pond, this is the little archway there. Henry Harvey had this built because he made so much money with the Crucius and all the pumping and all the kit and everything. This was, the walls are still there. This was going to be his entrance to his house. He didn't live long enough. But if anybody knows the late Hamilton Hawken, he lived in a farmhouse that's just about there. Council were coming, I'm going to say in the 1980s, something like that. Council come, they're going to take it down because it's so low. Hamilton come out with a shotgun. I didn't say it was loaded, but we know my late father worked for Hamilton. He came out with a shotgun and told the men politely, leave that alone. The time they got back to Scoria or wherever it was, he got that listed. They were tipping tons. I don't think I've got another one now. I'll go back to that. Just on this side is where Grover's Row was. The little roundhouse on the corner, if you stand there, you can see it there, is where the late Rick Mascola, the man from 9/11, like the history as well. That's where his mother lived, right on the corner there. This is just showing all about, the chains the men all needed to get a cylinder in. I'll go on from that. There we are. This is in London. This is in the, I've never been there, not in the museum, but that's an 8-foot diameter. Harvey's of Hayles provided 3/4 of the world's pumps at one stage. So they were quite well famous. It was pumping clear water. And they actually prevented a cholera outbreak in London. This is Javis Bickle. He had 4 children as well, but this is in his house. This is another one of his inventions, because he was a very, very clever man. I think This was a Sunday afternoon, and he was going down Newland for ice cream. But he's buried in St. Earth with his family. Very, very famous. Now, I put this one in. This is, again, on North Quay. You wouldn't know it, but you see the young lad there. Again, if you're going up to St. Michael's, just on the left as you're going up the hill, is a school. Harvest of a school built. Because he wanted people that worked for him, if they had time, or evenings or afternoons or whatever, they could work for him, and they could go to school and start to study, because everybody, was struggling. So we had a school built as well. I'll go on from that. This is just some of the machinery that was in Hayles itself. The biggest ship ever built by Asda, SS Ramley, 4,000 tons. That's it, 79 ships built there. Now, SS Cornubia, 1857 that was built. This was built in Hayles by Harvest of Hayles. It was the fastest steam paddle ship at that time. And eventually, it got bought by the Confederates in the American Civil War. And they used it as a gun runner, but also for supplies, etc., etc. And it was over 2 years before that could be trapped in port. So we did a good job, but it was made in Hayles. This was the last ship built in Hayles, and that was in 1895 was the last one. And it's called, 3 ships called Hayles altogether. Here we are, Lloyd's Bank Fire. They decided to save money, take the top off and put just a roof on it, so that's what happened in 1935. This is where the car park is. There's Lloyd's Bank there now, look. You come here, there's a car park on the left of Lloyd's Bank. Well, they decided, I remember all these, a row of houses there, they were called the Shoot. A row of houses, and the council said, we'll knock them down and make a free car park. Yeah, that's right, put your money in, that's what you're saying. Here we are. This is Bayview. I put this one in just for the simple reason there's no electric works there, so we know this is late 1800s. This was where Bayview Terrace is now, behind Nolan's Church. Remember Slaves of Hale? A lot of people forget Slaves of Hale, but they did a lot of work there. Scrap metal place as well. Hale Station, that closed in 85 altogether. Now this now, to go Asda itself, this is Harvest Foundry Yard. This is where they did a lot of casters. There's a lot of new houses there now. But I was fortunate a couple of years ago to go over there because of COVID, and they were digging out. And they had a gasworks, Harvest did, as did Cornish Property. But they had a gasworks there in that yard, 1843. I was able to take photographs of the actual area, but it's just full of houses now. Now, Miss Frances Ellis, this is all now to do with, we're going up the hill now, St. Michael's Hospital. Am I right yet for a minute or two? Yeah. A lot of people know St. Michael's Hospital. Well, this is the Downs. Miss Frances Ellis bought this off Mr. Rollins, who was the boss on Harvest of Hale. That was built in 1880. The Bird Paradise was built in 1862. That was all Harvest as well. So this is Mrs. Rollins went there, but then as she was getting older, she decided that she got in the daughters of, she was a Roman Catholic, and she had the amount of money nowadays of £14 million. She come to Hale, and at the Haven down Penzance, she built a lot of chapels all the way up through to London. She called in the Daughters of the Liège, which were the nuns. They come in the early 1900s, and she gave them all this. This was called Croft, this one, before that was built. But she'd give them all that on the condition they let her stay there until she passed away, because she was with her sister. And that's what they did, that's what the nuns. Oh, there's St. Michael's Hospital, like you said there, right? This is the first phase. Now, St. Michael's Hospital, when they started building it in 1912, it was actually opened 1 week before the First World War. So they didn't make a big thing of it. They had 10 beds downstairs for, we say NHS now, but people didn't have a lot of money to go there and have an operation. They had 10 beds above for people that could pay. And that supplemented those down below. That was the first phase. Now, a lot of these granite stones here come from the mine up Melanier, up by Tolroy, where the garage is. There was Melanier mines up there, and the granite was brought down to save money and put in the hospital. This is the car park now. He'd have a ticket if he stayed there too long. Henry Jenner, I don't know how you know what Henry Jenner is, but I'm a Cornish bard, and Henry Jenner was our first grand bard. He was barded in 1907 in Wales. Henry Jenner was married to Kitty Rowlands, who was Mr. Rowlands' daughter. This is years ago, it's called the nurses' home, because this is where the nurses come down. Now it's the Mary Therese house. They're both buried over in the land. So that's what that was. They had that built after the other, the main house was built. This was the first theatre. Good, isn't it? Great, St. Michael's. Now I've got to tell you this little story again. It's true. My late father, for the last 8 years of his life, worked for the nuns. They have an enclosed garden, 7 acres. And he worked there. We weren't allowed to go in there, but my father worked in there all like this. And he didn't want to retire. And well, you had to. 65, you had to, out, you finished. And he had to retire. On the last day of his working, he got that upset when he got in work, he collapsed. And they put him in hospital, in St. Michael's Hospital. Of course, they couldn't give him medication. And he said, when he woke up, he didn't know if he was in heaven or where he was, because when he woke up 3 o'clock in the morning, the next morning, there was 3 nuns around his bed praying. But that's so dedicated, because people would be frightened. You imagine you had an operation, you wake up with a lady there like that. What a fantastic hospital. We were treated absolutely. I bet there's lots of people who've been to St. Michael. What's happening here? Who stopped my button? Sorry about this. No. That's working. I am sorry about this.
Yeah.
No, what's happened here? Your battery is running low. I don't know if it meant my battery or the battery on this. That's what I didn't do. Look at that. Going again. Sorry about that. That'll all be on YouTube, It'll all be on YouTube. Anyhow, this is the latest war. This was from 1928. And we talk about smelting works. This is the size of a smelting works. This is Melanier smelting work. 1837 to say 1920. But they were still using it in 1916. And then there's a horse there. And there's a man, you can hardly see it, but he's in there. Massive. Now it's called Melanier Estate. We'll bulldoze down. I put this one in. Until you're down Hayles, see the sunshine on there. This is Le Lent. Le Lent Quay was built by the Traverso over there, all the big place over in the Lent. Built, when the boats used to come in before the quays were built, they used to ground the ships, just put them in on the sand, and then they would unload them, and then when the tide came in, because they were lighter, they could go out. They wanted down over there for St. Ives, they wanted their stuff to go on the Lent Quay. So that's where that was built. Here we go, look, here we go. South Quay, this is Asda. That's East Quay, that's where Sammy Phillips' place is now. And that's North Quay, okay? Now this is Carmsil, this is important, this one. Henry Harvey had this built in 1834. It's all to do with sluicing. Should be another photo there in a minute, anyhow. Now they wanted electric works down here. They needed somewhere, because they wanted electric up this end as well as down St. Ives North. And they had a railway line already on the North Quay. They had the water, ships could come in, they could bring in coal. So they had all the infrastructure that they needed. They started in 1910. 1911 they were producing electricity. Of course it shut in 1976. and all demolished by 1981. Now, I put this in, this should make, if anybody again know Hayles, used to be a Mr. Cooch. He was a ferryman from the Lent. He was very explicit with some of his words. We won't worry about that. If it was naughty, he'd chuck you in. But he was a ferryman there. He was the last ferryman. But I put this in. This is where the water went in to feed the electricity. Now, we called it the tripod. The only tripod I know in England with 4 sides. But that's what we called it, the tripod. Now, as I said, they'd done the electric works. HMS Bristol, because Harrods had finished it by 1903, it was sold then, the South Quay was sold to Ward and Co. They were scrap merchants. They started bringing in parts of the Grand Fleet in 1920, 1921. HMS Bristol. What somebody forgot was, they took out all the good bits in the boat and the big ship. Of course, it was higher than what they measured. Oh, we go back. Well, anyhow, what happened was he come through, and because all the electric then was up on big turrets, and it pulled everything down. I got lots of photos of it all, you know. So I just now GC3 associated octal. We called it ICI. No problem at all. They knew that we were going to war in 1938, I suppose, not early 1939, but they needed an element in seawater. They got it over in France at the time, but they decided they needed one down here. You can't get it in the North Sea. It's an element from a warm water called ethyl dibromide, is what it is, and it's more fuel efficient for our engines and also less noisy in the Second World War. This is just some information though. Use of anyhow. August 1939, production began. Molam's main contractors, 450 men on site 18 hours a week. 1939, 1940 was the coldest winter on record. But they opened by mid-1940, that was all built and up and running. Dingles of Redruce built the culvert to the outpool by the swimming pool, which you'll see a photograph in a minute. But, you know, so less than 12 months, he was up and produced them. You know? Here we are there, look. There's a photograph. This is what he was all about. Now, I put this in as alkaline because the first stage, I won't go into things, if we go on to North Quay, we would, but they started using alkaline with the system that they had to use. And they carried on with that from 1940 to 1954. And they closed the site down for 18 months, and then they started up with the acid process. But this was also an alkaline producing place there, because they used to bring everything in by boat and trains to mix it all up. That's just a photo of. Here we go. I'll go back to that one. Look, if you look there, there's nothing on the side of the building, right? Go on to there. Now look at that there, look. They were giant, they were flowing in air.